So today I'm finally working on the Craftsman GT, the 18.5 horsepower. What's going on is that over the years I've been using this thing to pick up leaves in the fall, and I have other things to cut the grass with, but I really like using this machine. But it's always been a little bit of a stinker getting started. And actually, if you watch one of my previous videos on this tractor, I'll put a link up above, you'll see that it starts a little funny. But this year I'm taking it out for the season. I'm charging up the battery, as you can see, but it doesn't want to start at all this time. I even put starting fluid in it. It fires for a little bit. Gas is actually filling the fuel filter there, so I did have that open. But there's something going on with either the fuel pump or the carburetor. And now I did buy a new carburetor, an aftermarket carburetor, a long time ago, and I'm finally just taking the time to put it on. So that's what today's video is about, is replacing a carburetor on this Kohler V-twin Kohler command engine right here. So let's get to it. Alright, let's get this air filter off. Probably replace that before we're done. And we're looking at a couple of 10mm nuts here. Alright, and this whole thing should just come off. Now there's a hose over here that comes into here, so what we're going to do is when we pull this off, we'll just gently set it up here. And now we're looking at the carburetor. The carburetor is held on by these two studs, and you'll see you can slide it off of there. But let's take a look at the new carburetor and compare what's going on. So here we had a wire for the anti-backfire solenoid, and that wire is here, and we can just disconnect that. On top we have a ground wire, and there is a ground wire right here as well. It disappears under the shroud a little bit, so hopefully I could use that same ground wire up here rather than, you know, I'll take this one off, and hopefully that'll work. Although this bolt or this screw or whatever this is bigger than that one, so this might be a little bit of a hassle. The fuel line comes in underneath here, so we've got this going on here, and there's also some linkage on the back side and linkage right here. This is the choke. Now the hole here is pretty good size, which tells me that there's actually a plastic grommet that goes in there, and then the wire linkage snaps into that plastic grommet. So let's dig into this carburetor and get it off. Alright, so we're up here. I'm going to take this screw out to remove that ground cable, ground wire that's on top. Going to push that aside, put the screw back in, then we're going to disconnect the fuel line. I do have the valve turned off, so let's slide that off of there. Alright, looks like we could probably stand to get a new piece in there. That's pretty stiff. So that's out of the way. Now we're looking at the linkage on this side. Let me move the camera around so you can get a better angle. Alright, so we got one piece of linkage that starts down here and goes up. This is the choke, and it comes up to the back side of this. And the other piece of linkage is here, and it goes up on the back side of the carburetor there. So down below here, this piece of linkage is held in place by a plastic clip, and if we push the top of the plastic clip sideways off of the linkage, there we go, then we could pull, we should be able to pull it out. There we go. There's also a spring that's connected. Let's gently pull that out, and there we go. Now that whole piece of linkage is free. So now let's pull this carburetor forward, and then if you look on the back side where the choke is, just give it a little twist, and that piece of linkage is off as well. So look at that. That was actually pretty simple. So now, like I mentioned earlier, the other piece of, there's a plastic grommet in this hole. So we're going to get this little spring off of there. Okay. And then I think we could, if we bend this in the right direction, pull this out of the hole, and that plastic grommet goes into the new carburetor. Don't lose it, don't forget it. It's in there pretty good, which is a good thing. There it is. Alright, so here is the gasket from the original. Let's see what kind of gaskets the new carburetor came with. Came with a whole bag full of goodies here. And this one in the back is really thick, so that's good. So let's, as long as we got it, let's replace it. Alright, and now the new carburetor. Again, not so sure about this grounding wire. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this screw out, and if the diameter isn't too big and it'll fit through this little grommet, we're going to keep using that. Alright, let's see. Oh, it just makes it. Alright. So we don't have to use this at all. Alright, so for now, we'll put this back in the hole. We'll take this little grommet and push it into this hole. Come on. There it is. And we're going to take this piece of linkage, which is still connected at the bottom, and nope, I'm wrong. I'm going to take this piece of linkage, and see, now this is just, this bottom is just an L bend. Make sure that piece is on the bottom, and this double bend is on the top. It goes into this hole where the grommet is. A little snug. Snug is good. And then we'll take the spring. Put it back in the little hole up there. If it'll cooperate with my fingers. Okay. Let's make sure this is moves freely. Seems to be. Alright, I think that'll work. Alright, so now we'll take this piece and that goes into this hole here. Make sure it's still connected on the bottom. There we go. And now let's put the carburetor back on. Alright, so make sure the choke linkage is good. And the throttle linkage down here at the bottom goes back into that plastic grommet, and then this plastic, like a little latch piece, locks on there. Get the little spring back in the hole there. Let's get at the grounding wire up here. Oop, easy. Snug that down, and we've got the anti-backfire solenoid wire. Usually gets tucked back here, so let's go get a new fuel line to replace this piece before I finish this mess. Alright, and I have some new fuel line. About the same length, maybe a little bit longer. And the new carburetor came with new fuel clamps. And the diameter is a little bit small. Let's just see if a couple of drops of oil will help. There we go. Another clamp on this side. right? Now let's connect the anti-backfire solenoid. And we're ready to bolt the carburetor back in place. Got all the linkage. Let's make sure all the linkages. In fact, I'm going to turn the key and listen to see if that anti-backfire solenoid is actually working. Yeah, it is. I can hear it clicking, open and closed. Oh, almost forgot a gasket. New gasket for here. Fuel line's a little bit in our way. Alright, everything's snug up, not pinched. I think we're ready to give it a start. Alright, I put a jumper pack on the battery because the battery's a little bit low, but I think we should crank it over and see what happens. Well, it appears everything is working good, so I'll button it all up again, get the air filter put back on, and go mow some grass. So